If one of the most important days of your life weren't stressful enough with the innumerable things that could go down the toilet, imagine having to trust a hooligan like me to deliver your wedding rings with a drone. Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of this thing I call Chosen Idea. For those of you who haven't been here before, my name is Marko. I'm a creative generalist. All that means is I've been lucky enough to get paid to do a bunch of creative stuff throughout my career. I've learned some things along the way, and now this is my chance to pass those things along to you guys. Maybe even learn a thing or two myself. Anyway, this episode starts with a story about our friend Sha and Henry who got married this past September. Before their invite could even hit my mailbox, Henry came to me with this idea that he had and a favor to ask. In my excitement to help, my inclination was to say yes before I even heard what this idea was. And my excitement was only heightened to find out that Henry wanted me to deliver their wedding rings with a drone. So, yeah. I didn't want this whole thing to be something that Sha and Henry would have to worry about too much in the midst of all the other things that they're going to have to concern themselves with. The first thing I have to do is meet with Henry about the venue as well as pick up his drone. We're going to use his drone, which is a little bit bigger than mine. He's got the Mavic Pro, I've got a Mavic Air. The Mavic Pro is pretty much impervious to Wi-Fi interference as well as being a little bit better in wind and likely could handle a larger payload as well. Yeah, I mentioned wind. This wedding was to take place outside, weather permitting, which also meant that there'd be two possible scenarios for where I'd fly this, indoors or outside, and both would require planning a different flight path as well. I was somewhat relieved when Henry told me that I could scope out these flight paths myself in person at the venue during the wedding rehearsal. And I could also take some photos of any potential obstacles well in advance for my big plan. Meticulous Henry had already grabbed some satellite images for me on which he had marked up exactly how things were going to be laid out on the day. When I got to the venue, I did take a ton of pictures. And I also did a walkthrough at about the same pace as I would be flying of the different flight paths I could potentially take to determine which would be the best. Establishing a point in the ceremony where I should take off so I'm arriving on time without disruption was probably something I was stressing about the most. Of course, aside from potentially giving someone an unplanned haircut. Or worse. When I got back home, it was time for me to set about designing an arm with a hook on it that would allow Henry to safely and easily grab the rings from the drone while it was hovering. This arm would have to be long enough to extend past the spinning propeller blades, but short enough not to impede any of the drone's flight characteristics. A material I use often for these projects is a light gauge plexiglass, and this one wouldn't be any exception. For those nerds out there who are interested, I have the measurements of this thing for you right here. Both rings would be on an aluminum carabiner like this. I think that's how you say carabiner. The carabiner being the point of contact with the hook would ensure that there'd be a consistency in performance between my tests and the way this would perform on the day. Regardless of the design of the rings, it wouldn't be a variable in the performance of the hook. Thinking through all the things that could potentially go wrong with this idea, what would happen if this fell off the hook with the rings on it into the grass? It could be really difficult finding this in the grass with the rings on it and result in some dresses and suits getting grass stained. We couldn't have that. So naturally, I went to my mom for the solution. And she had some bright yellow ribbon I could just stick on this thing and, well, yeah, problem solved. Well, the day had finally arrived that would determine whether my nerves would get the best of me. I brought along my own takeoff surface so I wouldn't have to take off from the grass. I brought a brand new SD card. I charged all the batteries just in case. I did a test flight before I left home to pick up my girlfriend and most awesome assistant, Marmar. Test flight went great. Had no real reason to worry. We arrived early just to make sure that nothing at the venue had changed from the plan. This was going to be an outdoor ceremony. The weather was perfect. There was almost no wind whatsoever. The ceremony started right on time, and so did I, at least at first. I turned the drone on. I powered the drone on and the controller to connect the two together. I did that at the start of the ceremony. I didn't want to start any earlier than that because having the drone idle too long would have me run the risk of the battery being dead when it was actually time to take off. And I could feel the blood drain from my head as soon as I did that because I saw that the drone and the controller weren't connecting. My heart started to race. There was no display on the screen. The LEDs weren't on. I wasn't getting the connect message on the screen. And then all of a sudden, the display came to life and I could see the live feed through the camera on the drone. And I was ready to go. My cue came up when I had to take off. I was in the air and everybody's looking up to the skies for the rings to come in. I didn't have a lot of time to calm down after nearly having a cardiac, but this was it. My trajectory was pretty much perfect. I slowed to line up the aisle for my approach before checking my altitude and then pushing forward again. Surprising myself, I was comfortable enough to even angle the drone toward Henry as he approached for the rings. I got the line of sight I needed to know I was clear behind me, and by that time Henry was motioning me to fly out. Now all that was left was to avoid the overhanging tree branches and telephone lines on the way up and back. What must have looked like a simple flight to onlookers that day, for me was a great relief to get through without incident. I've flown drones over oceans, volcanoes, through rainforests, but those few minutes were probably still the most exciting I've ever had flying a drone. The rest of the wedding was absolutely perfect and so much fun, just like the couple that we were there to celebrate. Sha and Henry, I was touched that you put your trust in me to do this for you guys safely and successfully. I want to thank you for allowing us to be part of your special day, and I also want to thank you for your bravery trying something new when your wedding was at stake. Well, I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did bringing it to you. If so, please hit that like button. If you dig this sort of thing, please consider subscribing. If you'd like a heads up on these videos coming up again, hit the notification bell. Thank you for coming by, and remember, keep working to make your chosen idea a reality. Until next time, peace. It's just a public service announcement from yours truly. Hey, we all know it's games and fun losing an eye. I get it. You know, all the cool kids are doing it. I know a couple really cool people with only one eye, and then there's pirates. But don't feel the pressure to be one of them. When you're using power tools, don't forget your eye protection.